Call the meeting to order. This is the Planning and Architectural Review Board meeting. Today is Tuesday, April 7th, 2026. Let's stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have a roll call? Barbara Revels. Scott Chapis.
Here.
Susie Johnston. Here. Lisa Smith. Here. Joanne Soman.
Here.
Rick Bellhumer.
I'm there.
Do we approve the minutes from the last meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written, even though they're
I'll second it.
Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any old business? No, ma'am. Great. Item 6, ordinance 2026-07.
We don't have to read titles, so this is the mobility, unless you want the title read, then I'll just summarize and say this is the mobility study and impact.
So, through you saying we're not going to recommend approval?
So, we don't read titles in our board. It's only a
Yeah.
commission that we read titles. So I was giving an introduction, but no, you will make a recommendation on it.
Thank you.
Any
It's been
comments?
a decade since I've been up here, so.
we always recommend it
Mhm.
or.
Oh, I know. I borrowed this.
No, do you have anything are you going to speak or are you just going to introduce?
Yeah, I'm going to introduce Lauren, yes.
Okay, go
yeah.
ahead.
Well, so do we want to, welcome Rick Bellhumer to the board?
Welcome, Rick. You've never sat in that seat, so welcome to that
I
seat,
have
too.
So in 2025, the City of Flagler Beach contracted with New Urban Concepts to prepare a mobility plan and to assist with adopting a mobility fee applicable to new development and to redevelopment. So the mobility plan sets a framework for moving people, providing mobility choices, and meeting future travel demands for the city. And you'll see in your packets that existing and future transportation conditions were evaluated. You have a lot of data there to review. And it was used to develop the draft mobility plan, and it includes a preliminary list of project recommendations. So 2 stakeholder meetings were held, and thank you all for those of you who attended. That was really great. Changes were made to the draft plan in response to the feedback that we got from the residents and from those who attended. So the 2015 mobility plan includes projects addressing future mobility needs for residents, businesses, employees, and visitors to the city. Also, the development of the mobility fee is the first step in a multi-step process to replace transportation concurrency with an alternative transportation system based on a mobility plan fee as provided for in the Florida State Statute, Section 163.31800. So Lauren has a great presentation, and I'll give my recommendation now. Staff recommends the Planning and Architectural Review Board recommends to the City Commission to approve the mobility plan and fee as you'll see presented. Thank you.
There we go. Okay, can you hear me? All right, hopefully you can see me over the stylus. I always think I should bring a stool with me. But good evening, my name is Lauren Rushing. I'm a transportation planner with New Urban Concepts. I see a lot of familiar faces from our stakeholder meetings, so you all will have to bear with me while I repeat a lot of information in the first half of this presentation. But we will have some new information regarding the mobility fee in the second half. And so just to get us started here, let's make sure this thing is working. There we go. Okay, perfect. All right, so a mobility plan is a vision for the city's transportation system to transition from one that is focused on moving vehicles and moving them quickly to moving people safely. This is a long-term plan, so we're looking out 24 years into the future into a 2050 planning horizon. And these identify project needs at a high level. And so while we have some renderings that we'll show you tonight and the project descriptions in the mobility plan do propose preliminary design recommendations, please note that each of these projects would go through their own planning, design, and funding process, and the ultimate design would be determined through staff, city commission, and recommendations from you all as well. Finally, the mobility plan is required to serve as the basis for the development of a mobility fee. And a mobility fee is a fee that is paid by new development that is intended to mitigate their impact to the off-site transportation system. So when development comes in, they would still be required to address site-related impacts as well, and this would be an additional fee to mitigate off-site impacts. This is a fee that's paid by new growth only, so for you all and also any residents watching today, we do like to emphasize that this is not a tax on existing residents, it's not an assessment on existing homes. This is a fee that's paid only by new growth to mitigate their impact. What you see on the screen here is called the assessment area. That's required by Florida statute that we establish an assessment area. For Flagler Beach, the assessment area is just the full city limits. We have one assessment area for the entire city, so that means that when development comes in, and depending on the land use, they would pay the same mobility fee rate no matter where they're developing within the city. The city does not currently have a roadway or a transportation impact fee or a mobility fee. The county does have a transportation impact fee, but they do not require Flagler Beach or any of their municipalities to collect that fee on their behalf, as many counties in Florida actually do. But this would be a brand new transportation fee and would be the only transportation fee that is assessed within Flagler Beach's city limits. This does require an amendment to your current city code under Chapter 12. So that chapter is currently titled Impact Fees. We would be changing that to Impact and Mobility Fees, and this is what would establish the mobility fee system in your code. And that amendment has been provided to you as backup for today's presentation. This mobility fee system is meant to replace your transportation concurrency system. So I will also note that Florida statute does require you to come in after you've adopted the mobility plan and fee, and within 1 year you have to update your comprehensive plan to remove any language referencing transportation concurrency and just generally any language that would be in conflict with properly implementing the mobility plan and mobility fee. So why does Flagler Beach need a mobility plan? The plan does provide that comprehensive vision to guide capital projects and development throughout your city. And so we talked about this during the stakeholder meeting. We work all across Florida. We've worked in many communities, and we do find that communities that have a plan in place do tend to fare better than those that don't. Because when you don't have a plan, development comes in, they build the cheapest and easiest way for them, which is not always the best way for your community, and that development ends up shaping your community. And so this is the moment to have a say in how new growth and development happens within Flagler Beach. And this will help you balance maintaining the quality of life for your existing residents while also welcoming that new growth, because we want to see new growth. We just want it to be what you all would like to see. And so this also does create a city-controlled funding mechanism. So this is a new revenue source to pay for transportation projects. And then we also see that having a plan and fee helps you to leverage other funding opportunities as well. So anytime you have projects identified on a community-vetted plan, that will help you to approach the state, approach the TPO, the federal government, and makes you more competitive for grant funding, and also helps you in negotiations and conversations when you want projects to happen on state and county roads. You can take the plan to them and say, hey, look, we want to see this done. This is identified in our plan. And we also have a little bit of money that we could contribute to the project to help it move along. So we've seen that relationship work very well in other places. To start this process, we underwent a transportation evaluation. So Florida statute requires, as part of the development of a mobility fee, that we look at your existing conditions and we have to prove that we are not going to be charging new development for any existing deficiencies on your roadway. So we looked both at your roadway conditions in 2026. We also used local growth rates to project that traffic out into 2050 so we could look at your future conditions. And what we did was we performed in what they call an area-wide level of service analysis. So instead of looking at your roadway on a segment-by-segment basis, we looked at your overall network. We looked at the traffic volumes on your network, the capacities for those roadways, and how much of that capacity you're using today and in the future. And what we found is that your roadway network in 2026, you're utilizing about 39% of your total available capacity. And in 2050, you'd be expected to utilize about 73% of that total capacity. So from a vehicular perspective, we do not find any existing or future deficiencies on your roadway system. And so that's a good thing because now we know that we're not going to be charging new development for any issues that you have in your network today. We also looked at your transportation system from a multimodal perspective. So you all may be familiar with level of service standards. These are metrics that transportation engineers and planners have used for years to tell you how your system's performing from the perspective of a driver. But what most communities don't have is a similar metric to tell you how the system's performing for people who are walking, biking, taking other types of mobility devices. And so part of what we do for cities and what we've done for Flagler Beach is we have developed what we call quality of service standards, and that will tell you how your system, how your street environment is performing for other types of travel. And so this could be its own presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions about it, but I will just give a brief overview tonight so I don't keep you here all night. But we have developed standards both for the street itself. Those are based on posted speed limit. So the lower the speed limit, the higher the quality of service. And that's because the quality of service standards are focused on safety. How safe are we keeping our roadways? And so those are, those look at speeds because we know that speed is the primary factor in understanding how safe our roadways are, especially for people outside of vehicles. We also developed those standards for your off-street multimodal facilities, so think your sidewalks and your trails, and then your on-street facilities, things like bike lanes, paved shoulders, curbless shared streets, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes. And so this evaluation helped us understand where you have gaps in your network in terms of multimodal facilities and where improvements can be made across your roadway system. And so this is the draft mobility plan. We have 3 maps that we've provided to you. The first map on the left is sort of a broader, more regional look at the projects that we're proposing. So we have proposed some projects that are outside of Flagler Beach's city limits. And that's just in recognition that travel does not end or begin at your city limits, but there are maybe issues or mobility needs surrounding Flagler Beach that could very well also affect mobility within Flagler Beach. We also took an inventory of the sort of pre-existing planned projects in the surrounding area, either through the state, the county, or things that have been identified through your LRTP, because we just wanted to get a full picture of all of the mobility projects that are expected to happen over the next 24 years. And so we have included those projects as we're demonstrating them in the plan, but those projects will not be calculated into the fee themselves. The second map just kind of has a closer look at the city and the downtown area. And then we've also, since our last stakeholder meeting, we provided a transit map. We are recommending in the plan a microtransit pilot. And so that would be that could be a local transit service that the city could run through a third-party vendor. Aside from that, the transit projects that we've included in the plan are really just pulled from Flagler County's transit development plan. We wanted to make sure that your plan was consistent with that, and so we are demonstrating those projects in this plan as well. And so that includes fixed route bus service on Moody Boulevard, as well as on State Road A1A. And then in the latest plan, they also intend to have a mobility on demand service that would be run in what they call the beaches zone, which is that yellow area that you see there. But their plan would have more detail about those projects. All of these projects are detailed in the mobility plan report and the mobility fee technical report. So these were sort of our 2 major deliverables that were provided to the city aside from the ordinance, and these both should have also been provided to you as backup for today's presentation. As we were determining what project recommendations to place in the mobility plan, we did have sort of several overarching goals that guided that process. So we wanted to look, this plan is very focused on multimodal travel. We wanted to look at how do we create a complete connected multimodal transportation system that would improve safety, both from a vehicular perspective, but also for multimodal travel. We also looked at how could we reroute through traffic around your downtown area. We'll talk a little bit about Moody Boulevard. That's a project that you all have been talking about for years and is already in your CRA plan. So we just wanted to kind of take things one step further and think about, that's a state road. If we're talking to DOT about reducing lanes on Moody Boulevard, what accommodations can we make for traffic to route that around? If people are needing to go further up on State Road A1A or further south, how can we reroute them a different way so that they don't have to go directly through your downtown? And that also works to improve walkability in the downtown and CRA. That was a huge theme of this mobility plan. Another theme is how do we establish a park once environment, which I'll talk about in a few slides. And then generally, all of these projects are working to set the framework for the redevelopment of your downtown urban core. And so I won't go through all the projects in the plan today because that would take a long time, but I will just highlight a few of the key projects so you can kind of understand some of the concepts that we're proposing within. One of those concepts is what's known as a curbless shared street. We're proposing this on Central Avenue between North 3rd Street and South 3rd Street. We're also proposing it on South 2nd and South 3rd. And these streets are streets that are redesigned so that the curb is totally flat and so that it creates a shared space for all modes of travel, pedestrians, cyclists, microtransit, golf carts, and cars. The design elements that you would see on this type of street typically involve specialty pavers, lots of streetscape, landscaping, placemaking, signage. Sometimes they include retractable bollards that can be raised and used during special events so that you could close that street off and make it a pedestrian-only street. And the idea is that you're creating a shared street where everyone needs to move very slowly. Cars are allowed, but they're not prioritized. And so everyone is slowing down, paying a little bit more attention, and that street space becomes safer for all people and prioritizes people and placemaking. You do often see these in downtown areas, and so they tend to be a catalyst for redevelopment, and they tend to support things like outdoor dining, more public space, retail and shopping. And so the idea here is that these three streets would be redesigned into curbless shared streets, and that would sort of elevate them as your downtown district, with Central Avenue really being your kind of main street through the downtown.
Is it possible to ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Could I?
So the last time the city did a downtown development plan with parking, with pavers and landscaping and that type of thing, it basically took away parking. Okay. And we have a lot of evidence of that on side streets and people sometimes trying to pack in, they're getting tickets, parking where it's really not parking. Would this type of plan advocate for changing that?
Yes, so when it comes to the curbless shared streets, they can be designed however you all choose is best. So they could include on-street parking or not. It kind of depends on the right-of-way. I know these streets over here are very narrow. But I'll talk a little bit about this idea of a park once environment, and I think that'll address some of your concerns there as well. So this is just an example of what that could look like. This is in Lake Wales, Florida. So you'll see they do, and this is a little bit of a larger right-of-way, so they did fit the on-street parking, which may not fit here on 2nd and 3rd Street. But this is an example of a project that we proposed in their mobility plan. A couple of years later, they did come in and build it, and they implemented this specifically to help revitalize their dying downtown. And that has been very successful in the past year and a half since it's been built. They have a lot of vacant spaces that have been filled. Our next project is along Ocean Shore Boulevard. This is something that we're calling the context-sensitive enhancement, and that's just kind of a fancy word to say improvements that would slow vehicles, make the street safer, and enhance the pedestrian environment. And so what we're proposing here is just to formalize the on-street parking that already exists on State Road A1A. So this specifically would be for the segment between North 10th Street and South 2nd Street, and then also a little bit further down between South 4th Street and South 9th Street. So what we're proposing is to formalize that parking with special pavers, include landscaping, streetscapes, street trees, and all these things create visual friction for cars as they're driving into the city. It also creates a gateway into the downtown area. So whether you're driving from the north or you're driving from the south, you drive through this corridor, you're seeing the design change. That's indicating to you that, okay, I'm getting closer to downtown, I'm slowing down, there's more to look at, there's going to be more people walking around or biking in this area, and that creates a safer street environment for everyone. Because while this is, yes, go ahead.
That's a state road.
It is a state road, yes, that's correct.
So we gonna spend our money on state road?
No, so I will get into that when I talk about the mobility fee, but what we've done is anything that is proposed on a state road, we've assumed that 90% of the funding would come from the state, and that leaves a little bit of room to offer a local match, like I said, to contribute to the project and kind of help to move it along, but most of the burden of that cost would be on the state, of course, yes. Okay, and then the only other thing we are proposing here is safer crossings between the residential and commercial on the west side and the ocean side, and then where that sidewalk is not yet 8 feet, we're recommending it to widen it to an 8-foot shared use path. Going a little bit further down on Ocean Shore between South 2nd and South 4th Street, we are recommending what we're calling the Pier District. So what we'd like to do here is remove the on-street parking on the west side of the street. We could add on-street parking on some of those crossroads leading up to State Road A1A to kind of make up for that loss. But we'd like to use that extra space to widen the pedestrian frontage so that that area could support outdoor dining, retail shopping, and just generally more of a public realm and community gathering spaces. We also formalized the angled parking that's already there on the right side of the road. And in the segments just north and just south of this, you will be getting more of that parallel parking. So I think between that and the side streets, we'd have to do an analysis, but you may not be losing as much parking as you think. And then this would really help to kind of enhance the coastal character along this corridor. When people are here, they know they're in the Pier District. When they're driving through, they know they're in the heart of the city. And this just shows kind of the continuum of what we're proposing along State Road A1A. So you have the just south of South 9th Street. That segment was redeveloped a few years back by FDOT. I know there have been some complaints about the median and the aesthetics of that project, but from an engineering perspective, it does work well to slow traffic. And so we'd like to see the essence of that design mirrored on the north part of State Road A1A, north of 10th Street, with the caveat that we'd like to talk to DOT about, how do we incorporate more ocean-friendly and native vegetation that could work as green infrastructure, help with flooding, and create a more aesthetic environment along that part of the corridor. Then south of North 10th Street, you'd get into that context-sensitive enhancement. You'd have the shared use path on the west side. You'd have the parallel parking. And then after that, you would get into the Pier District, and you'd be in the heart of the city. And that continuum would be mirrored on the south end of the corridor. There we go. Okay. So now we'll talk a little bit. Oh, I think there's a delay on this. Okay. This here is a rendering of Moody Boulevard. And so again, I know this is a project you all have been talking about for a long time. We pulled it from your CRA plan. In conversations with staff, we were directed to keep that in the plan, and we're told that it does continue to be a priority for the city. I know that the city manager has already recently been in conversations with DOT about how can we start talking about reducing lanes on Moody Boulevard. So they are aware that this is a direction that the city would like to go. I don't know how much response they've really gotten from FDOT yet, but we decided that it would be good to keep it in the plan because it's important to identify it as a community desire. And so your renderings were, I think, 15 years old or so, so we just took the liberty to provide some updated renderings. Within the mobility plan, we've provided 2 rendering options. This one shows a buffered, landscaped buffer between the bike lane and the driving lanes. The other one shows a landscaped median as a second option. But the idea is that you would reduce this corridor from 4 lanes down to 2 lanes, and then you would use that extra space for a widened pedestrian area and a separated bike lane that would potentially be on the same level as the sidewalk. We've also included some raised crossings to help people cross that corridor safely. Moody right now kind of creates a barrier between the north part of your CRA and the south part, and we think this would help that area to be a lot more cohesive. And so the idea is just to enhance this as a more multimodal environment, and we think this would create a beautiful gateway into Flagler Beach from the county and from the west part of the city. And this is just a rendering. It may be a little hard to see on the screen, but this is an aerial of the same rendering. So you can see the driving lanes, the grass barrier, and then the bike lane and the sidewalk. We are also recommending that you implement roundabouts both at Flagler Avenue and State Road A1A. And our thought here was, again, we're talking to DOT. Doing a lane reduction on a state road is not going to be an easy thing, probably. And so their job is to keep traffic flowing. That's what they care about. And so we wanted to think about how could we keep traffic flowing through this area, but not directly into downtown. And so we think the roundabout would be good to keep traffic flowing here, but then use signage to redirect through traffic north and south on Flagler Avenue, depending on where people need to go. And to upgrade Flagler to a collector road that would help to enhance that for vehicle traffic. And then in addition to that, we've just recommended a number of what we call implementation initiatives. And so these are kind of follow-on initiatives that we would recommend that the city carry out in conjunction with implementing the mobility plan projects. So these could be either policies, other plans, or programs that would help to facilitate better mobility in Flagler Beach, but are not necessarily infrastructure projects. These programs also help to build a little bit more flexibility into the plan. This is, again, a long-term plan, so it's hard for us to stand here today and tell you what your needs are going to be in 10, 15 years. So what this does is create sort of a pot of money within the mobility fees for specific types of improvements. So we have, for example, bicycle parking, safety improvements, sidewalk improvements. And so that just allows us, instead of today saying, this sidewalk on this street needs to be upgraded, you could have that pot of money to pull from the mobility fees and address needs as they arise over time. So that's just kind of for flexibility purposes. And then a lot of these programs are also focused, as I mentioned, on that Park Once environment. And so a Park Once environment, like the name implies, is an urban environment where you would come into the city, you would park once in a centralized parking location, and then you could use other means of transportation to either reach your final destination or travel between destinations within the city. And so, for example, maybe someone would come into Flagler Beach, they would park at a centralized visitors parking facility, and then they would take a bike share bike to get over to the pier. Or maybe a microtransit vehicle service would pick them up at that centralized location and take them out to the beach. And then they could walk between restaurants, retail, shopping, without having to get back in their car and drive specifically to each destination. So what that does is it helps to prevent cruising. You mentioned on-street parking everywhere. There's often a perception that there's not enough parking in a place. When in reality, there is a lot of parking. It's just scattered and uncentralized, and so you get a lot of people cruising around looking for parking spaces, and that creates congestion and unsafe situations where you're trying to prioritize people walking around. And so one thing that we recommended as part of creating that Park Once environment is also running a water taxi service between the planned Veranda Bay development and the city side of the river. And on each end of that water taxi service, we would put a mobility hub. And a mobility hub can look like a lot of different things, but it could be, a park and ride lot. It could be some kind of centralized parking facility where you maybe have bike share parking, scooter share parking, golf cart parking. Maybe you have some amenities like shelters or water fountains, wayfinding signage, maps of the city showing you where the key destinations are and how to get around. And those would essentially be your hubs for mobility, and that's where you would go to access other types of multimodal travel. Let's see. Okay, and then the last concept I'll talk about today is we've also recommended what's called a low-speed streets program. So a low-speed street is a street that's posted at 20 miles per hour. I'm told the local roads in Flagler Beach are already posted at 20 miles an hour, which is great. But we know that reducing the posted speed limit does not often slow vehicles in and of itself, but you also need to have changes to the street geometry that sort of forces vehicles to slow down or changes driver behavior. And so these would be roads where the speed limit is 20 miles an hour, but you would also have things like lane narrowing through more on-street parking, through on-street bicycle lanes, or what they call advisory sidewalks, where you don't have off-street concrete sidewalks. You could use some of that street space to provide a sidewalk on the road. It could also include things like traffic calming, so chicanes, mini traffic circles, raised intersections and crossings. Again, all things that slow vehicles down and also create a more accommodating environment for multimodal travel.
All you really need is construction, because everybody parks on the street, and a lot of lawn maintenance companies. It slows everybody down because you have to wait your turn to go around them.
Yes, exactly. So it is the same kind of concept. So here are some examples of what that looks like in, these photos are all from Gainesville. And so you'll see you have some on-street parking, you have some chicanes, curb bump outs, raised crossings, mini traffic circle. This here in the middle, oh, you can't see the screen, the pointer on screen, but this picture in the middle is what Gainesville calls a bicycle boulevard. So they just put down some pavement markings that indicate, this street has priority for bicycles. This over on the right-hand side is what's called a multimodal one-way pair. So this street would be paired with the street just parallel to it. The vehicle traffic would be one way, and then that frees up space to add multimodal facilities on both sides of the road. So you can actually see here how that does visually narrow the drive aisle for vehicles. It slows them down, and this obviously communicates that multimodal travel is a priority on this street. So that's the kind of treatments that we're thinking about when we mention the Low Speed Streets program. Okay, so that's all well and good, and that's a lot of what some of you have heard before. So now we'll get into the mobility fee part of this. The plan is always the fun part, but the real question always comes down to, okay, how are we going to pay for this, right? And so that's where the mobility fee comes in. And so we did assign preliminary planning level cost estimates to each of the projects that we've proposed in the plan. And we are estimating that the overall cost of this plan is around $229 million, but we are required by Florida statute to consider any anticipated funding from other sources when we calculate the mobility fee. And so I mentioned that we took an inventory of a lot of projects that are already being proposed in the region. We looked at a broader area than just Flagler Beach. So there are many projects in here that are already proposed through the state or through the county, or have been identified as needs through the LRTP. There are projects like Moody and State Road A1A where we've recommended projects, but again, we're assuming that 90% of that funding will come from the state for those projects. And so considering all of that, we've actually got an attributable mobility plan cost for the city of closer to $48 million, and that would be over the 24-year life of the plan. Again, this is all detailed in the mobility fee technical report. This slide just kind of shows our 18-step process for how we develop that mobility fee. This is a process that has been somewhat tailored to Flagler Beach based on your needs, but is also a methodology that we've been using for almost 15 years here at New Urban Concepts. And so just to pull some of the data from that report, feel free to read it. It's not a very interesting read, but if you're having trouble falling asleep at night, feel free to get through it. But for your purposes, I'll just pull up a little bit of the data. So one of the things we're also required to do is to demonstrate that there's actually a demand for these projects in the form of future travel demand. And so again, we looked at your current network, we projected your traffic out into 2050. And for the purposes of the fee, we looked at all your collectors and arterials and major local roads within the city and well within the larger mobility study area. And what we found is that we are expecting that Flagler Beach would see an increase of about 126,000 vehicle miles of travel between now and 2050. We then use a conversion factor that's given to us through the National Household Travel Survey to convert that to person miles of travel. Because with the mobility planning fee, we don't just care about vehicle travel, but we want to understand how we will move people throughout Flagler Beach. And so we converted that to person miles of travel, and that's showing that we're expecting to see an increase of 193,000 person miles of travel over the planning horizon. We then converted that into a rate that is charged per person miles of capacity that is added to your transportation system via those mobility projects. And that boils down to our final mobility fee calculation. And so in kind of simplistic terms, basically what we use to calculate the mobility fee is the attributable cost of those mobility plan projects, the person miles of capacity that would be added to your transportation system. So often when you talk about capacity, you're talking about vehicular capacity. We're widening a road, we're adding capacity to that roadway. But here we're considering all of the infrastructure projects, the plans, the programs, the other initiatives that would add capacity for your mobility system to move people. And then we also consider average trip generation rates, which are given to us through the ITE trip generation manual per each type of land use that's in the mobility fee schedule. And so what that gives us is a rate per land use that would be charged to development as they are coming in and building. And our goal with the schedule is always to find a balance between wanting to charge for the full impact of each of those land uses, but also kind of wanting to streamline this enough so that it's easy for your staff to administer. When you have a really detailed schedule, sometimes it can lead to a lot of back and forth between your building clerks and your applicants, and so we want to avoid that because that can become very cumbersome for your staff. And so what does this mean in reality? We'll go through a few examples here. So the first example would be a 1,500 square foot single family residential home. This is assessed on a per 1,000 square foot basis, and that rate is $2,981 per 1,000 square feet. So the way we structure these fee calculations is we just boil it down so that when the end user is calculating this, it's just a really simple calculation. So you would just do 1.5 times 2,981, and you would get a final mobility fee rate of $4,472 for that 1,500 square foot home. And again, that is a one-time fee that is charged when the home is built. Our next example is a commercial development. So let's say you have a 4,000 square foot McDonald's restaurant with one drive-through. They would pay the convenience retail rate for the square footage of the McDonald's building itself, and then they would also pay an additional rate for the drive-through because that drive-through is generating additional trips separate from the trips that are actually going in to eat at the restaurant. And so you add those two rates, and what you would get is a total mobility fee of about $140,000 for that McDonald's. And then I've just put the mobility fee schedule up here. So we've organized this by land use categories. So you have your residential land uses. For residential, we are proposing a streamlined residential category where if you were a multifamily home, if you were a single-family home, doesn't matter, you would pay the same rate based on your size. And so we think that just leads to a fairer system. A lot of these schedules in the past have used based on dwelling unit, but we think this is a more fair system where the bigger your house is, the more you're paying, the smaller your house is, the less you're paying. And then we also have overnight lodging, which is assessed by per room, and mobile residence would be a separate fee as well. These are our institutional uses, so this covers anything from places of worship to nursing homes, assisted living facilities, daycare, pre-K, and then post-secondary education, hospitals and colleges and things like that. And these are all assessed on a per 1,000 square foot basis as well. We've just had one streamlined industrial category. You all don't have a lot of industrial development in Flagler Beach, so we thought one streamlined category there should work fine for you all. We've got 3 recreational uses. One is marina, that's assessed on a per berth plus per 10 slips. Unenclosed commercial recreation would be anything that is outside, so golf courses, tennis courts, other outdoor sporting facilities. Enclosed commercial recreation would be things like arcades or fitness centers, gyms, health clubs, things like that. One streamlined category for office as well. And then we have 3 different categories for retail uses. And these are basically grouped on similarities and trip generations. So your general retail category would be your lowest generating uses when it comes to residential, so things like restaurants, pharmacies, grocery stores. Then you have your high impact retail. These would be things like also groceries, but the chain grocery stores, so like a Publix would fall under high impact retail. The general retail category is more for your local businesses. And then we have convenience retail. Those are the uses that generate the most trips, and those are in the hundreds per day. So they are the highest impact, they're paying the highest fee, and those would be things like your fast food restaurants, McDonald's, or gas stations, places that have a lot of high turnover.
What about mixed use, where you would have a residence over a business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, the way the ordinance is written is that you would get the site plan for that mixed-use development, and you would assess each separate part of that based on the land use that it falls under. And then we have our additive fees, and so these are things like, again, I mentioned the McDonald's would need to pay per drive-through lane, the bank would need to pay per drive-through lane. For motor vehicle repair service, we have that based on per bay or stall. For gas stations, they would have to pay additionally for the number of fuel pumps that they have. And then we also have a retail drive-through rate, and this is included in reflection of a lot of innovation that we're seeing in that space right now. So for example, I'm from Jacksonville. I was at Target last weekend, and when I was walking up to the Target, I noticed that they had about 15 different drive-through pickup spaces. And so that's where you can place your order online. You don't even have to go into the store. You just drive up, an employee comes out, and they give you your items, and you pay right there. And so we're seeing a lot of that. So we've generally been including a retail drive-through rate in our schedules to account for that kind of thing that you're seeing more at Targets, Publix, Walmart, that kind of thing.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Lupita, don't we have a prohibition for drive-throughs on the beach side? Right. Right. I just wanted to double check that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any feedback or direction from you all. That's why we're here tonight. And we are slated to do the first reading of this with the commission on this Thursday. Yep. Rick.
Now, is all these statistics and projections including Miranda Bay and Summertown?
So,
Because some of the maps I saw did not.
right. So the projections that we have done are a straight line linear projection that does not include any future improvements. The growth rates, so yeah, indirectly, yes. The growth rates that we are using are from the regional transportation demand model, which should include land use entitlements for those areas. But the number of lanes and the traffic volume that we're looking at in the future would just look at the capacity with no improvements on roadways.
Yeah, but you gotta factor in how much, how much 600 homes are gonna change.
Yeah, and we did review
Money
the.
coming in and how much commercial's gonna be. Makes you wonder some of these. $30,000 for one gas pump can add up pretty quick.
It can, yes.
And I just hope that doesn't put a hindrance on our commercial that we're hoping to get from the other side of the bridge.
Yeah, and that's a valid concern. We hear that a lot. What I can tell you is that we have not received feedback from any of our clients in the time that I've been working for New Urban Concepts that this hinders commercial development in any way. A lot of especially the more expensive fees, so the chain gas stations, the chain restaurants, these are big businesses, big chain companies that, you know, build nationally and are used to going into other communities and seeing these fees. So this is kind of just the cost of doing business for them generally. What we have seen is other communities that we've worked in where they have provided deep discounts or haven't updated their fees in 15 years in hopes that it would incentivize commercial development. So, for example, in Gainesville, they have been exempting the east side of Gainesville from their fees for many years now, and we're updating their fee, and they're now considering charging a fee in that area because it hasn't had the effect that they thought that it would. Another example is Cape Coral, so they're a highly residential city down in southwest Florida. They wanted to incentivize commercial development as well so that they could, you know, make a transition into kind of a more self-sustained city rather than being dependent on Lee County for jobs. And they've discounted their fees for 19 years, and they again last summer had this conversation of, well, that's not working, and we have real transportation needs, so let's get this fee adopted.
So how hard is it to make amendments to this as things progress?
So you can make an amendment to it at any time as long as you are lowering the fees and not increasing the fees. You can only increase the fees per statute every 5 years.
Every 5 years?
Yes. Yep. And the commission could make decisions to discount certain land uses or to phase this over time. There are a lot of different options for kind of lessening the sticker shock of this in the very beginning if they chose to move in that direction.
And Lauren, just to clarify, in our assessment, we did include Summertown and
yeah, so I think I misstated that. We did review the Summertown and the Veranda Bay traffic impact assessments, and they are not projecting that Moody Boulevard or any of the roadways in the surrounding area will be over capacity in the future.
Well, just all the fees are based on projections, so I just wanted to make sure that that was part of the projection.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So, you've been working on this for how long now? A year and a half?
About a year, yeah. I think last May we started, yep.
Okay. So, a 5-year look at it over again would take how long?
Usually,
Would take a whole year, right?
no, so this is the first plan fee, so that would be an update. So hypothetically, it could be a shorter process, yes. But these these projects, it all depends on, you know, there are a lot of dynamics that affect how fast the project moves. Most of our projects take anywhere from 6 months to a year, typically.
Okay. That's all I got for now. Thank you.
And Barbara?
So, I know in years past when we would have a study or something such as this, and then as times move forward and we have an issue and, or someone's proposing something and everybody goes, oh, well, the charrette said that we should have this look, or the mobility plan says we shouldn't have anything there, no parking there. And I think it's important that this is a fluid plan and that it's not locked in stone when we have obvious issues that didn't turn out the way we thought, because we've done that before. More specifically, the area that you've exempted out in front of the pier, pretty picture, but you've got some businesses in there that are strangled right now, and even when the pier is done and the parking is open across the street, that's all they've got. And they're still strangled and having a tough time of it. And I just think that we need to not single out certain blocks where there's nowhere for anybody to park to get to those businesses. And I know that we're trying to encourage multimodal and that people could easily walk from Flagler Avenue up here. I'd love to run the little service around to drop people off, but every time that's been brought up by some of the business community, the city goes, well, who's going to pay for it? We don't have any money, and nothing happens. And that's been being talked about for way more than a year of how these businesses are struggling. So this is very nice. It'd be really nice to live in this kind of community when it's done. so long as we pay attention to some of those issues and that it has the ability to be altered when necessary.
I think that's one of the hallmarks of the plan is that it is flexible.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
yes, and based on meeting the city's needs and not tied to it, because there are programs that aren't necessarily going to be in the capital improvement plan where has to be.
I mean, it's great to have outside eyes come into a
Sure.
community that's used to planning these urban areas and give us a fresh look at what we could look at. I think that's great. Just hope that we can use it appropriately.
Or to use it as a pick and choose. I mean, as whatever module is necessary at the time.
I do think it's
Thank
one
you
of
for
the
that feedback.
hallmarks that it's flexible.
Yep, absolutely. So you can update it every 5 years. You can also choose to amend it and add projects as you see fit, but you just can't update the mobility fee more frequently than every 5 years,
Unless you're reducing.
unless you're reducing. Correct. Yes. Yep.
Incentivizing.
Yes.
And I forgot I had one other thing. Going through the impact fee in here, I was seeing library impact fee, police impact fee, fire impact fee. We would have the mobility fee. It seems like we could, and then we have our water and sewer impact fees, and they are obviously going to get higher. I could see $20,000 for a single-family house to pay in impact fees.
Well, we don't have a transportation fee, so that's one of the ones that's missing.
If you were in Ponca, you'd get $3,700 per 1,000 square feet
Yeah.
transportation fee on a.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always been, besides the water and sewer, that's always been the biggie.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be stifling the growth of
No.
Broncos.
It's
Yeah.
Right.
Not at all. They just added thousands of people.
Any other questions for the presenter?
Yes. Oh, sorry. You want to go ahead?
I just had a question for Lapita. We had talked one point about this applying to additions, like to a single-family home that adds a bedroom or 2 bedrooms. Is that still that is the plan?
Yes.
So someone adds living, habitable, like,
Yes.
Second story.
Redevelopment.
or
Yes.
goes from 2 bedrooms to 4, or,
Yeah, it includes redevelopment.
okay. Thank you.
And that really is the name of the game for Flagler Beach.
Yes, I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
exactly. That's what I was going to ask, because that's where we're going here. People are going to not be happy with their 1950s vintage. They're going to tear it down and start over. Granted, that's part of this, but what if they just go to second story here, or
You're absolutely right, Scott.
if there's enough land?
well, a lot of
Okay.
people aren't gonna tear down because they benefit from keeping the same footprint.
Yeah.
And so,
But the fee would only be on the additional space.
Right.
right.
Unless you tore down and redid it. Tear it down and redo it, then it starts,
Well, then it should.
yeah.
Well, typically, if you tear down and you start over, you don't pay impact fees because the fact that there was a house there and
You don't
you
pay
put
sewer
it
and water impact fees, but you still pay
Yeah.
some of the fees.
So
To keep
it would only be if the
structure
square
there.
footage increased.
yeah.
And it would be the difference between the old home and the new home.
That would refer to, impact fees that have already been paid. Because we have a lot of new impact fees that we didn't have prior. So redevelopment of some older houses, people only paid water and sewer impact fees. So, now we have all these others, and that would come into play.
Any other questions? Okay. I'd like to open it up to public comment. Come forward if you could state your name and your address, please. Good evening. My name is Lori Haig, and I'm living at 1702 South Central Avenue. And my question is, the mobility fees that are collected from developers, do they go into a reserve fund at the city so they're exclusively used for new transportation improvements, not mixed in with other capital projects?
That's correct. Yeah. Go ahead, Lauren.
Absolutely. So it is required by Florida statute that the city would establish a special revenue fund specifically for mobility fees to ensure just that they're being paid, they're going towards the mobility projects that would then provide a benefit to that new development.
Question. We'll close public comment. All right, are we ready to make a motion for recommendation?
I'll make a motion that, we recommend approval of ordinance 2026-07.
I'll second.
Barbara Rebels. Aye. Scott Chapis.
Yes.
Lisa Smith.
Yes.
Joanne Soman.
Yes.
Rick Belhumer.
Yes.
Chair Johnston. Yes.
I remember when we, as a commission, added the additional impact fees. And I got to looking at them and said, whoa, where's our transportation fee? So then that's what, initiated this. Glad it finally getting ready to go across the finish line. Thank you, Lupita, for all your work in this, and you guys.
I was thinking we should have done this 20 years ago before we added Publix and everything else. Okay.
We can use more sidewalks and crosswalks and bike paths and so.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you Thursday.
Item 6B, ordinance 2026-06. Lupita?
Thank you. You did see a small-scale zoning amendment last month, and this is the small-scale flu amendment from high-density residential to recreation for 2.94 acres. Oops, make that change here, of high-density to recreation. And the request to amend the flu aligns with the city's vision for the golf course to remain without potential for residential development and is consistent with the comprehensive plan, the land development code, and compatible with the surrounding use of the golf course and neighborhood. And staff recommends the Planning and Architectural Review Board recommends to the City Commission to approve the flu amendment for 2.94 acres of high density to recreation. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from the dais?
No-brainer.
Okay, I'll open it up for public comment. I'll bring it back. No running. Bring it back.
Recommend approval of ordinance 2026-06.
Second.
Rick Belhumer.
Yes.
Joanne Soman.
Yes.
Lisa Smith.
Yes.
Scott Chapin.
Yes.
Barbara Rebels.
Yes.
Chair Johnston.
Yes.
Item 7, any other business? No, ma'am. Lupita, City Planner report.
I do not have a formal report, but I do have a request from the city for the PARB if we could consider a workshop at our next meeting just to review some of the ordinances that might have some gray areas, and then to consider specifically amending the code. I just want to give you a heads up that allows residential development in the general commercial and the tourist commercial, which does not align with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan allows for residential only if it's a mixed use, not just a straight single family. There's a little bit of competing interest because the only places that are allowed to have short-term rentals is the general commercial and tourist commercial, which ends up being a single family home. And by state law, that's not really considered a business, so we have a competing issue there. So I just would like to bring that to the board and some other ordinances that are a little bit of gray and are causing some friction as redevelopment continues. So if we could have a workshop an hour before the public meeting, that would be really helpful, at least to get the conversation started on some of those. So if you would approve having a workshop, we can bring some of those items to the board.
You talking about a par board only?
Yes, first with the par board before, and then your recommendation obviously will go to the commission.
Yeah. Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Susie, my birthday.
Okay.
So we wanna be here at 4:30 instead of 5:30, is what you're asking?
Okay. So,
Was that next month?
May 5th.
And that concludes my report.
I think I have another year, but I'm not sure.
Oh, I wonder if it was like, I filled in for somebody.
There's been a couple people that have replaced others that
Yeah,
that are up.
that their term continues.
Yeah, Patty and I had just talked about it.
Well, I'm one of them. I only get 2 months for it.
I only had 1 month when I started.
Would you like me to send an email out so everybody kind of knows where they're at? Okay.
Yes, you did.
But then we had to switch.
Well, I can see if I can find out like how it's going to work, when the applications are due, and when it would go on the city commission. Okay. All right. I'll take care of it.
Be tied into, I mean, they were talking about going down beside the building department along Flagler Ave, crossing over at the light, and then coming back up, I think by the church, 10th Street, something like that, 8th.
Yeah,
And
there
then
was,
going north with 8 feet sidewalks, so maybe we could get some of those 8 feet sidewalks out of that.
yes,
Sun Trail.
and they did take the Central
Okay.
into consideration, and there was just a recent, presentation last week, and so I picked up a presentation, so I just need to make a copy and send it to you all so you can see, you know, it's a little bit stuck in the, PPE part, moving through that, but it's comprehensive, so I'll make sure that I get that presentation to you all.
The A1A corridor north, from, I guess, around maybe 8th Street going north, it's almost impossible to widen far enough to be a multi-use path. So the goal of the Sun Trail is to have a multi-use path, not just a sidewalk. So there's areas up especially on the north side, south of 10th Street, that had telephone poles in the middle of the sidewalk. And there's no way you're gonna get a 12-foot multi-use path out of that. So that's why they're taking the option to go around.
When would these fees come into effect?
Yeah, 90 days.
The fees, the impact fees would start being collectible 90 days after ordinance adoption. When do they actually get paid would be with building permits for the development. It is an impact fee, it's just another name, it's just the same animal by a different name.
Motion to adjourn.